Support comes from Helen Keller International. Last year, nearly 84 million children and families received life-saving care from generous supporters, but the need remains urgent. Learn more about ways to help continue to build a healthier world for all at helenkellerintl.org/KUOW.
You know, every day on Up First, NPR's Golden Globe-nominated morning news podcast, we bring you three essential stories. At the heart of each story are questions. What really happened? What really mattered? What happens next? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious and to follow the facts. Follow Up First wherever you get your podcasts and start your day knowing what matters and why.
There's a scene that shows up in just about every spaghetti western movie, the showdown. Two guys at opposite ends of a dusty street. Their hands are hovering near their holsters, but neither one wants to draw first.
Now we start.
Welcome to Seattle's housing market. We've had this long standoff between buyers and sellers in the Seattle area, with neither side blinking.
Seattle's housing market is feeling the effects of a shifting economy.
Mortgage rates are still trying to figure out what's going on.
Median home prices, we are down 3 to 4% from where we were last March.
From KUOW in Seattle, this is Booming. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
And I'm Joshua McNichols. The real estate market is always fickle, but right now it feels especially uncertain.
Today, what does this standoff mean if you're trying to buy or sell a home right now? And could it finally drive prices down?
We check in on the spring real estate market, coming up next.
So what'd you think of the split level?
That one was nice. It was move-in ready, and I liked the granite countertops.
And there was room for my man cave.
But it didn't have any windows, just drawings of windows.
Yeah. It was 5 cents over budget.
Should we cross that one off the list?
Yeah, I think so.
So, Joshua, my family bought a starter house in 2020, a little 2-bed, 1-bath, and we figured we would follow the kind of traditional path. We would gain some equity, hold on to it as we started our family, and then when we outgrew it, buy a bigger place. But we tried that, and the math just would not math. We looked at a handful of homes last year, and there was just no way that we could make it work financially. So we're going to stay put for now and just try to make what we have work.
Yeah, in my family, our kids are moving out, and we've thought a lot about downsizing, but it just doesn't make sense to go through that right now because of high interest rates.
Yeah, interest rates right now are about double the rate we got back in 2020. And home prices are still really high here. So even with the equity that we've built in our house, there's just no way that we could sell it and afford a new, bigger place in the current market.
Yeah, it's a really weird time in the real estate market right now. You know, usually we think of real estate as being either a seller's market or a buyer's market, and whichever group has the advantage drives sales. But right now, it seems to be nobody's market.
Nobody's market is exactly how it feels if you've tried to get out there.
Yeah, and a lot of people are wondering, like, what is up with that?
I'll raise my hand and say I'm one of those people, so what is up with that?
I spoke with someone who could answer some of those questions. Daryl Fairweather. She's Redfin's chief economist, and she also wrote a book last year called Hate the Game: Economic Cheat Codes for Life, Love, and Work.
Good title.
I'm going to play her interview for you, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Great. Can't wait to hear it.
Hey, Daryl.
Hello.
You know, Seattle's had this really hot real estate market for a long time, and it had been like a train speeding along so fast that no one's able to hop on at the station. You know, it just zooms right past. But right now, it looks like it's slowing down, and, you know, that could be an opportunity for people to hop on that train and buy a home, you know, whether that's a single-family home or a townhome or a condo. We're so used to Seattle being in a housing crunch where more people were moving here and builders weren't building enough homes for all of them. But this is different. So what's going on?
I relate to that so much. I moved to Seattle in 2016 to work for Amazon, which was when Seattle's real estate market was really taking off because there were so many tech employees like myself moving into the city, getting paid these high salaries, and just looking for anywhere to live and willing to spend in order to get it. So it was really hard to find a rental. It was really hard to eventually buy a house. I was always competing, always desperate to just get something accepted. But now things are totally different, and it has a lot to do with the Seattle economy. There aren't as many employees moving in with those high paying salaries. If anything, there are a lot of white collar workers who are worried that they are going to be obsolesced with AI. So there just isn't this frenzy anymore. The market is more in balance, but it's not a good kind of balance because there really aren't that many people willing to sell either, because so many homeowners were able to lock in record low mortgage rates during the pandemic, and they don't have great options if they were to sell and buy again. So the housing market is at a bit of a standstill. I would say demand is a bit weaker than supply, which is why prices are barely moving at all and home sales are down.
When we look at the homes that are selling, where is that demand coming from? Are people still moving here, or are people just like swapping one home for another in this region or swapping up from an apartment? Who is buying the homes that are selling?
There are still people who are moving into Seattle. Oftentimes they're moving in from San Francisco, which is even more expensive and even more difficult of a place to buy a home. So if you're coming from there, then Seattle still feels relatively affordable, even though if you're, a long-term Seattle resident, you probably think the prices have gotten ridiculously high. And there are also people who just feel like it's their time to buy a home. They weren't ready back when mortgage rates were low, but they feel good in their careers and they just want to have that place that they settle down in and really put down roots. So there still is some demand, but a lot of people have been priced out by higher mortgage rates and are more willing to rent because renting offers flexibility, especially during these economic uncertain times.
You mentioned that some people might not be looking to buy a home because they're sort of worried about their future. Maybe they're worried about having their job displaced by AI. Over the past few years, we've seen tens of thousands of tech layoffs. Some of them may be related to AI. We don't know for sure, but we think that's starting to happen. Historically, tech companies have driven demand for new housing in the region. So what impacts are the layoffs having on the market?
It's very different than the way things were in the 2010s when a company like Amazon was doubling its Seattle workforce every single year and putting so much pressure on the housing market. So things feel different now because of that absence, that there aren't all of these people constantly moving in, constantly adding to demand for housing, pushing up rents and home prices. Now it's more like a stable flow of people both moving into Seattle and moving out, because there are people who have been priced out and are looking at other surrounding areas or moving to Las Vegas or Arizona or other places that have more affordable housing.
Are we seeing growth or loss in population here?
For home buyers, the people who are searching on Redfin, there are more people looking to leave Seattle than there are people looking to move in. Seattle actually ranked as the number 4 metro that people are looking to leave. So that's very different than the way things were in the 2010s when Seattle would pop up on the places that people are most looking to move into.
Wow. Does this create opportunities for renters who might want to pick up homes at a discounted price?
Well, a lot of people are choosing to stay renters because if you just compare the cost of renting a place to owning a place, renting is going to be more affordable on a monthly basis because of how high mortgage rates have pushed up those higher mortgage payments. So a lot of would-be home buyers are choosing to stay renters longer, but because rents have been flat, that does allow them the opportunity to save more, to put more money towards a down payment, where maybe they're not going to buy this year, but they'll be in a better position to buy next year.
What kinds of homes are not selling? I know that there are fewer homes being sold, but if you were to look at all the homes that are staying on the market longer, which kinds of homes are doing the worst?
Homes that need work are not doing great right now because the buyer not only has to come up with a down payment and the mortgage payment, they need to have money set aside for repairs. Condo sales are down. They're down 14.8% month over month in Seattle. Condos used to be attractive because if you were renting a one-bedroom apartment and your rent was going up every single year, the only way to escape that cycle of paying more and more money to your landlord was to become the owner yourself and to own that one-bedroom unit or two-bedroom unit. So you're at least fixing your monthly mortgage payment. But now mortgage rates are so high and rents are pretty stable that there isn't that pressure of fearing that your rent is going to go up, pushing people to own. And then on top of that, mortgage rates are quite high, which makes owning less achievable. It's the people who are able to pay in all cash that can see that as a better opportunity. But for people who are getting a mortgage, that interest rate makes it really obvious that the mortgage payment is quite expensive.
Here on Booming, we've been keeping an eye out for signs of whether recent changes in taxes could be causing people to leave. We're talking about the cumulative impact of several taxes that affect mostly rich people: a capital gains tax, a millionaire tax, and an estate tax. Are there any early signs that people are fleeing those taxes? Like, are you seeing a glut of empty mega mansions on the shores of Lake Washington?
No, that's not what's happening. So what we're actually seeing is that fewer people are deciding to list these luxury homes that we define as being the top 5% of the market in terms of price. New listings of luxury homes in Seattle are actually down 14% from last year. If people were actually putting their homes on the market and leaving Seattle, that number should be up, not down. But also, these laws haven't gone into effect yet. So perhaps people are waiting to see if they actually get passed, if they're actually implemented before deciding whether to leave or not. I actually have a friend who is worried about her taxes or her family's taxes going up with these laws, and they're starting to consider moving to Nevada or Florida or Texas. But it's very early stages for her. She really needs to do more research about what her lifestyle would be like if she were to leave, how much she would have to spend on school for her kids, or like what that life would actually be like. And I have a feeling that when she goes to do that exercise, she will realize that she's probably better off staying in Seattle, even if it's going to cost her more money. But it's something that's going through people's minds, but not resulting in action yet.
A little earlier, I did some reporting comparing Seattle to Austin, and that city started to see a drop in demand because fewer people were moving there. They were planning to build a whole lot more housing, and I was wondering if that had an effect yet, but it was too early for that. I kind of feel like Seattle is going through the same thing right now. Would you say that Seattle's housing slowdown is a local story or something that reflects big national trends?
We're seeing similar patterns play out nationally where demand is weak. There are far more sellers and there are buyers out there, and yet prices aren't coming down because sellers aren't willing to accept lower prices. So that's true in many parts of the country. The Sun Belt, where Austin is, it's a bit different of a story. They built a lot of homes during the pandemic when there were so many people moving in. And because so much supply was added, prices have come down. Those newly built homes, they don't have anybody owning them with some locked in mortgage. These builders want to sell them at whatever price they can get. So prices can correct, at least in that new construction segment of the market. Seattle hasn't seen much construction, but I think what they have in common, Seattle and Austin, is that they are these secondary tech hubs to the Bay Area. And Austin was hyped up to be the next big thing and experience a boom similar to what Seattle saw during the 2010s. But once the pandemic ended, a lot of people just kind of canceled their plans to move to Austin. They moved back to the Bay Area, whereas Seattle, I think, has had a bit more of a stable trajectory. Its boom has already kind of happened and is settling right now.
Yeah, we don't have that massive expansion of like giant suburban areas like Austin has.
Yeah, limited land.
What about for people who rent? Like, what's happening with rents?
Okay, so according to Apartment List, I'm using Apartment List data because we don't publish our own rental data anymore. Rents have been pretty flat in Seattle since 2023, which is similar to what I've seen in other data sources, also similar to the national picture. What's happening in rents is that, yeah, Seattle did build more than they did historically during the pandemic. And when they built, they were mostly building these towers of apartment buildings. And though it was mostly 1-bedroom and 0-bedroom units because those are very profitable for developers, assuming they can fill them with renters. But most people are looking, or at least where the most demand is, are for homes that are suitable for families. So it's still difficult for the owners of these rental units to find people willing to move in, especially to a newer building that's a little bit higher end. It's hard to find people willing to pay that premium. So prices have settled for rents.
People have wondered for a long time if Seattle's housing bubble would ever burst. So would you say that's happening now?
This is a burst. This is more like a normalization. Maybe you call it a correction. Prices aren't falling. And the reason prices aren't falling is because homeowners don't have a reason to sell. You really need to have distressed sellers who will take whatever price they can get for their home in order for prices to drop. Sellers are at a stalemate with buyers, and that's why prices still remain elevated. We may have several years of price growth being below overall inflation or wage growth, which would allow housing to get more affordable, but it will be a very long burn to that place of affordability. It's not going to be a swift correction like we saw during the foreclosure crisis.
When you look out into the future and imagine how the home buying landscape might change soon, what do you see? What do you imagine will happen?
I think, assuming the economy doesn't have any curveballs coming for it, which there could always be a curveball in the economy, I think that we are going to stay in this high rate environment for the rest of the year, which means that demand will still feel sort of weak relative to supply, which means prices will still be flat and not be growing. And during that time, wages will continue to rise. And that in and of itself will start to get the market going, but it's going to be a very slow transition. When mortgage rates went up at their fastest pace on record back in the summer or late spring of 2022, we thought that this was, going to be some temporary pain. The housing market was going to go through, a correction, but give it a year or two and sales will rebound. But here we are in 2026 and mortgage rates are still high. Sales are still near record lows. So it's surprising that this correction is lasting as long as it has. And there really isn't an end in sight because mortgage rates remain elevated. It will take time for sellers to realize what their homes are actually worth and not expect higher prices than what buyers are willing to pay. And it will take time for buyers to, start to see increases in their wages, increases in their savings that are substantial enough for them to afford homes at the prices that they're at right now.
Well, Daryl Fairweather, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, happy to do so.
Joshua, what I heard from Daryl is that Seattle's real estate market is kind of stuck, maybe because it's trapped in the past. Mm-hmm. People seem to have the same expectations that they did in 2020 when low interest rates and high demand kept things moving really quickly and kept things pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But things are different now. More people are leaving than coming here. That was a big surprise to me.
It's a big shift after so many years when people were flooding in and we didn't know where we were going to put them all.
And just to be clear, when we talk about people leaving, we're not really talking about millionaires, right?
Right.
Because we hear a lot about people considering fleeing the millionaire's tax, but presumably those wouldn't be the same people who are feeling squeezed by the housing market, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but I have a question. Daryl made it sound like renting is actually maybe a better idea right now. It's a little cheaper than owning because of the high interest rate environment. So for people who are going that route, are there enough rentals available to them?
Actually, yes. I mean, there are more rental options out there than usual. The vacancy rate is higher than it was during the booming years. Daryl talked about rents being flat, but I'm also hearing more and more anecdotes about people getting discounts on their rent.
Wow. It would have been hard to imagine that a few years ago.
Yeah.
Could we see home prices come down anytime soon, given everything that we've talked about?
If we keep seeing low demand, then maybe, eventually. Someone has to blink. There are three things that could change that situation. Interest rates could drop below 6%. That's when some experts say things could start to loosen up.
Okay.
But uncertainty about the war and the global economy and inflation have prevented that kind of drop. The second thing that could happen is sellers could decide that they're not going to get the prices that they got a few years ago, and they could start lowering their prices. Or the third thing is that buyers could hold their noses and ignore the high interest rates and buy anyway.
If they can afford it.
Yeah, if they can afford it. And maybe they'll bank on being able to refinance later at a lower rate. It's hard to predict what will happen, but this can't go on forever. The stuck market here creates a lot of friction, like dinosaurs in a tar pit or something. And that friction makes it hard for people to relocate for new jobs.
Well, I guess we're just in wait-and-see mode then. Joshua, thanks for bringing us this update on our very weird housing market.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Coming up next, the end game.
Support comes from Helen Keller International. Helen Keller believed that the welfare of each is bound up in the welfare of all, a conviction that continues to guide the organization's work worldwide, helping families amidst rising food costs, climate shocks, and under-resourced health systems. More at helenkellerintl.org/KUOW.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.
Welcome back. Our producer, Alec Cowan, is here with the end game.
Hey, guys. Hey. So housing has been a crunch here in Seattle for a while. We all know this, right?
We do.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. And so for today's end game, I've got a list of unique listings for structures in Washington, things that people have converted into real living spaces. And I'd like to see if you can guess which ones are real and which are fake.
Okay.
All right. For the first question here, which of these buildings in Seattle was turned into luxury condos? A, the original KUOW radio transmission tower building near Queen Anne, which was made into a duplex in 1979 and which included the original transmitter room preserved as a den. B, the 1906 First Church of Christ Scientist building on Capitol Hill, which was converted into 12 townhome-style units with original stained glass windows and bedrooms that overlooked the original church dome. Or C, the South Fremont Bridge toll booth, which was empty for years after tolls were abolished in the 1930s, but turned into a highly sought-after 400-foot micro studio in 2014.
I want to say it's the bridge because how fun to be like a troll who lives above the bridge, but I feel like it's the church.
Yeah, I think it must be the church too, because there are a lot of these converted churches. I mean, people in churches often talk about Seattle as being like, quote unquote, unchurched because there's fewer churchgoers here. So that sounds really likely to me.
There's the Pine Box in Capitol Hill, right? Which was like, it used to be a church and now it's a bar.
Yeah, it is the First Church of Christ Scientist building. It's now known as the Sanctuary on Capitol Hill. It became 12 boutique condos after a conversion in 2011. It's an old 1906 building, very authentic. The developer was very strictly limited in the amount of exterior changes they could actually make, and so the Gothic facade is all still there.
That sounds like a cool place. I always thought it would be great to live in a church because they have such airy spaces above you, high ceilings.
They're beautiful, yeah.
Light
they don't
coming
make them
in.
like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, question 2. So which of these is real and which of these is fake? Is it A, a Lake Washington dry dock that was converted from a Navy submarine dock into a floating estate with 5 total residences and a helipad? B, a decommissioned fire lookout in the Cascades, which was retrofitted with insulation and plumbing to be a year-round residence? Or C, an old Bainbridge Island dairy farm, which still includes an original farm shopping list written in pencil?
Ooh, I bet it's the Bainbridge one.
Yeah, me too. We're on the same page with
We
this.
are. We're aligned.
Yeah, I mean, fire lookouts, you could imagine them like renting them out as vacation spaces, but much less a home,
Yeah.
And what was the first one again?
A Lake Washington dry dock that used to service Navy submarines.
I'm imagining living in a dry dock would be kind of like living in a bunker. Although with these, really rich people, sometimes on the east side, you can imagine them like converting something really weird into a home. But I'm thinking it's the dairy farm too.
Yeah.
So it is the dairy farm.
All right.
Yeah, it is the
2 for 2.
You're even so far. It was originally built in 1905. Converted into a residence in 1980 by a local Seattle architect. The handwritten pencil farm shopping list that I referenced has line items like 2,100 pounds of seed.
Wow.
And CNBC shouted out this Bainbridge Island dairy farm as one of the country's most remarkable converted homes.
Wow,
So add that
I'd
to
like
your summer tour list. All right, question number 3, your final question today. Which of these is real? A retired lighthouse on Vashon Island, bought by a couple in 1989 who converted the keeper's quarters into a 2-bedroom home. B, a retired Washington State ferry in Anacortes, the MV Klickitat, which was turned into a floating home complete with a car deck by a marine architect in 2001. Or C, a decommissioned nuclear missile silo outside of Spokane, which was turned into a livable home with an elevator, a games room, even an indoor basketball court.
I'm going to say the missile silo.
You think it's the missile silo?
Yeah, I've seen videos of that where a guy was giving a tour of his underground bunker home.
I think it's the lighthouse.
You think it's the lighthouse?
I mean, it sounds like so romantic. This old couple in a lighthouse. I want it to be true.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's the nuclear missile silo.
Okay, way less
the
romantic.
Nuclear missile silo, much less romantic.
Nothing says there's no place like home, like a nuclear missile silo.
I do have to say, in the video that I saw, the missile silo was definitely like a man cave. I mean, this guy had converted this. I saw this in the gym while I was like working out. It was up on one of those home improvement shows on the TV up there, and there were some comments about like, my wife is not super excited about this, but like,
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, we bought a silo. Well, yeah, so Washington has 9 Atlas E intercontinental ballistic missile sites. This one in particular, it's in a very small town called Sprague, Washington, just off of I-90. And it housed an ICBM during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was turned into a very real, actual livable home by a retired engineer. It took 30 years for him to do this. And it was last on the market, as far as I can tell, in 2023. How much do you think a nuclear missile silo goes for in 2023's housing market?
Well, what's the square footage?
That's a great question.
I imagine it's pretty big.
Enough for an ICBM.
Yeah, okay.
And does it come with a regular house on the surface?
That's also a very good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. In the case of the video I saw, it did. It was just like, he was like, yeah, we had this extra space, so we made the second home down here, and mostly it's just me down here.
So how else would people find it for parties? I mean,
you're right. Yeah. I'm going to guess like 1.5 million, just because a missile silo home, I don't think adds that much value, honestly. I can't imagine there's that much demand for it.
Out in rural Washington? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, for preppers.
Okay.
Yeah. No HOA fees?
I don't know, 950,000?
It is $1.45 million for the Sprague missile silo.
For the low cost, it could be yours.
Yeah.
There you go.
Awesome.
Well, that was fun. Thanks, Alec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it for Booming. Thanks so much for listening.
If you are battling this crazy housing market right now and want to share your story with us, you can email us at booming@kuow.org, or even better, leave us a voicemail at 206-221-7158, and maybe you'll be featured on a future episode.
Yeah. And special thanks to those of you who are donating to the show. So we couldn't do it without you. If you want to donate, go to kuow.org/booming. And thanks.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols, and we'll see you next time.
Support comes from Helen Keller International. Last year, nearly 84 million children and families received life-saving care from generous supporters, but the need remains urgent. Learn more about ways to help continue to build a healthier world for all at helenkellerintl.org/KUOW.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.